Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tower 9 Podcast, episode 13. My name is TJ, joined by DTwo. As per the norm, he is the head writer of SamuraiGamers.com. I'm a Shoutcaster extraordinaire, and this is your AOV podcast. Is that good? We got everything? Alright, great. Let's open things up then. You briefly touched on over the last few weeks, of course, you've had the patch. I just got it this week. Let's talk about Clone Clash, because that's been a new mode, and it's been my favorite new mode.
Hey, mine too. I've really enjoyed playing Clone Clash, and even when you have an unfavored matchup, it's nice to try that challenge and see how it works. Particularly when you have like 5 Grax, and you're like, how many hooks can we land? Otherwise, we're dead.
Can I explain something? 5-man Pura is the right game to play.
I have never tried that. But she did get nerfed, so...
You know what a Forest Sentry is, right? That's the stun owl thing that goes out. And it bounces between a few people, and it stuns a ridiculous number of them, and it's frustrating and gross. Imagine if instead of 1 of those, there were 5 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's stunned, sporadically, intermittently, for no conceivable reason. Then all the Nature's Rallies go out, and everyone's got so much armor and so many other stuns. It's actually the best thing. Do you have enough damage to win a team fight? No. Do you have enough HP to win a team fight? Yes. You just don't die.
Well, they don't die either, is the problem. They're stunned for about 8 seconds, and then they're like, oh, we get to attack now. Okay. You're dead.
I also, Gilder was one that I liked. I think, generally, teams work best when you have characters that can fulfill multiple roles, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, strangely enough, a really good hero is Xanis, because the problems he has in normal games is he can't get to the backline because there's beefy guys standing in front of him. And in this mode, either he's going against those beefy guys and has enough damage to just kill them, or there's just a bunch of squishies and he has no problem getting there. Whereas, again, in real games, he just runs up, he's like, yeah, then he doesn't quite get there, and then everyone just stares at him, and he's like, oh crap, I'm dead, aren't I? And yeah. But he actually kills people in this mode, which is good. Irie's another really good hero. There's a few heroes who are just extremely impressive in this mode.
I've really enjoyed. I liked Malik. I don't know if that was just you, but any character where the ultimate is stupid, in Clone Clash, the ultimate is more so, and it's great.
Just so many circles on the ground. Actually, you know who's also really good is L'Oreal. Once you hit a certain point, there's just so many circles on the ground. I've played as L'Oreal twice and against L'Oreal like once or twice, and it's impossible to deal with because she just doesn't die. And you ever see like an Arthur or a Lubu trying to chase around L'Oreal's just blinking back and forth in all directions? It's kind of a sad sight to see. And it's really ridiculous if you are the L'Oreal.
We're talking, of course, about the new mode, Clone Clash, available on everyone's home phone now. Whenever I say home phone, I think of, and if you win this game show, your prize is Carl Sagan's voice on your home answering machine.
No idea what you're referring to.
You never? Okay. Wait, don't tell me. File that under references that are not gotten. Okay. Someone will get it, though. The major thing about Clone Clash, of course, in addition to being able to play with a whole bunch of other characters of the same character as you, is I think it's kind of exposed how bad the vast majority of the community is at building.
Yeah.
Because
and exactly where you're going.
whenever you're setting up a build, you're like, okay, this is Dio-chan. I know how I should build Dio-chan. I don't play Dio-chan because I'm not an awful human being, but I occasionally enjoy the suffering of others, so I have a vague sense of how you should build Dio-chan. Then you look over at your buddy, and they're building all attack speed for some reason, and you're like, why are 4 boots going to help you? Could you explain that to me?
So actually, mages, some people have to actually build attack even as mages just to get the opposing team to not focus on one particular sort of defense. And I've actually lost to a team of Alice's when one of them was just building attack damage and was really good at it, and she was just zooming around the map with friendship. So it can be good if one person does it, and it has to be very specific, or one or two people. But I think the bigger pet peeve of mine is when people specifically build the wrong type of armor or wrong type of defense. They'll go against a team that is only capable of doing physical damage, and they'll get like magic defense or vice versa. And then it's like, come on, just think for 1 second, please. Don't build that shield of the lost when it's all magic damage.
It requires adaptation, right? In a way that I think the Clone Clash mode is good because, one, it lets people try characters they wouldn't normally and play styles they wouldn't normally, and you get to kind of think, because the only differentiating factor between you and your allies is how you're building. So it puts more of a spotlight on those builds than any other mode has previously, and that to me is good, particularly given how awful the vast majority of the community apparently is at building their characters.
One last thing on that. I do like how much creativity that you can have with these builds that you can't really have, even in casual mode. If you try to do something strange like an AP Arthur, people will just get so mad at you. And now you have that freedom to do whatever you want. And sometimes you'll find something that could maybe work, or just fun in general.
Well, it's certainly been my favorite edition, but there have been others. Let's talk about version 17 in its entirety. We've now had a week on the Western servers of play, and that's included the last week of the Valor series, wherein we saw the rise of the radical wizard dude with something to prove. Ignis took the main stage in a terrifying and vaguely upsetting way.
Yeah, the fact that his mark goes off immediately instead of waiting a second is absolutely huge, because it procs everything, and every part of every single ability of his gets stronger if there's a mark attached to them, including stuns, including heals, including shields, and including true damage on Holy Embers. So getting that mark immediately is massive, and you're seeing how oppressive it can be.
And the fact that Fire Crash resets Fire Crash can get to a point where if you have a grouped up team fight, I think it was Sleepy on Allegiance was just going Fire Crash, Fire Crash, Fire Crash, Fire Crash, Fire Crash, just dumping fire and damage and holy fury into a tight group of people. They did lose that game though. That was the first Ignis loss we'd seen in Valor series. And I'd like kind of your thoughts, because you have seen a little bit more Ignis in professional play. As of right now, I think he fits perfectly into the Western meta in a way that makes him insanely powerful.
Well, what makes him really good is you can pair him with someone like Violet and have 3 heavy frontliners, and it's extremely hard to deal with unless you have a very dedicated, group of people who are trying to die the backline. And since Cricknack these days is getting first ban, that's very hard to accomplish. You have to pick something like a Zill, but Zill gets someone countered by Xenial because he doesn't get enough damage to kill people, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's an extremely potent composition right now. The one thing I will say about Ignis is he doesn't really have the damage late game. He can really bully people out in the early game. He can really snowball things because his AoE just either zones people out or kills them, or takes them pretty low down in health. So that can be very powerful in the early to mid game, but once it gets to the late game, he can't just delete someone the way, say a Raz or a Liliana can, 2 of the other top mages. So that's, I would say, one of his big weaknesses. That's why I feel like you need to pair him with a hero who can help with that poke and can delete people like a Violet.
I saw him pair particularly well with an Annette, because you could group people together and then knock them down. And time again, that is exactly what happened. If you have a good control character and you have a good Ignis player, you have a good duo. They'll win.
Right. And what also helps that pairing is that Annette has good damage for support, but her abilities can be a little bit awkward to land. So Ignis helps her land her abilities and vice versa so that they can get those resets off. And as you mentioned earlier, Ignis with Fire Crash repeatedly going off, that helps in its passive as well. So they're really good synergy between those two heroes.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that duo, and I can't imagine we'll see it again after week number 1. A lot of people were caught off guard. Do you have anything else that really blew your mind out of the update?
Not exactly out of the updates, but Emily was used by Liang a couple times in the GCS and completely defeated Sun, who is one of the best DS laners in the world, playing Richter, who is a new hero on Taiwan, and he's like first ban material, and Liang just beat him straight up. Just straight up beat him in that duel between them. And so from there, more players in the GCS have started to play Amelie, and she also got a buff on top of that. So she could be seeing a rise in the future as more people in the GCS play, and then that knowledge starts to spread to other regions. She is absolutely ridiculous now. The thing about her is she didn't really get buffed as far as her dueling capabilities. It's just that people got better at playing her, but in team fights she got way better because she's way more durable.
We saw an Amelie in Valor series, and she was negligible. She wasn't the reason her team lost, but she also definitely was not the reason that they were playing well.
Yeah. Well, we've seen... Since Liang started making her popular, we've seen a couple of teams who weren't as good try to play Emily. It didn't have nearly the same effect. So yeah, you got to be good at her in order to be able to be effective.
And I think that's one of a couple different characters that fall into that assassination class that are now kind of there. Because we saw a lot of Western teams try Kriknak this week. And, spoiler alert, didn't work for any of them. Like,
really?
We saw some good Kriknak play, but it was not the Kriknak that won them the game or lost them the game. It was just... I would say they would have had more success if they'd gone for a Lindis across the board.
And that's coming from you, who is like the biggest Lindis hater.
I am a big Lindis hater, although less so this update. I think she's now the best jungle marksman. But I think the Western teams have not figured out how to position a Kriknak in a team fight. I think they just genuinely don't know. And we keep seeing that hurt them. The best jungle assassin play we saw was Kriknak with Azuka and sidelane, and that gave them a 1-2 potential that was very, very good for bursting people down. But,
I'm always like a week late in watching the Valor series, so I haven't watched these past matches, but my initial thoughts...
me!
Sorry. But Kriknak has been devastating, and the one thing that Kriknak can do that makes him so powerful in Taiwan and Thailand is that previously, if you were playing a very tanky DS lane character, you were never in any danger of dying, and that didn't even cross your mind as you're playing. So you're just happily out in the middle of the lane, and if a marksman jungler comes across, you just walk away easily. And Kriknak can take down the most tanky of side lane junglers, side lane heroes, because he just does a bajillion damage a burst. And that's what's catching a lot of people off guard. And it's really hard for them to drop those habits of just being out in the lane as a very tanky hero, like a Lubu or, a Roxy or an Arum even just dies to Kriknak. So people are just getting completely caught off guard. And I feel like without having watched the Valor series, I think that my guess would be that people have been so used to playing marksman junglers, and the play style is so diametrically opposite. You need to just completely die the backline and have no fear for your life. There's no poking, there's no nibbling. You just go straight in and kill, and usually get the kill, and sometimes you can even get out or maybe kill more people, but I feel like there just needs to be that no fear aspect of it.
You know what shocked me? Vex had a bad week this week. And he's had a few weeks in a row that are a bit shaky. But I thought for sure post-patch, with Nakroth being played in the RPL semi-finals, with genuinely fantastic play on Kriknak in every region on this patch, I thought the melee jungler specialist would have a field day. And he didn't. So do you think that there's, changes in the meta that are punishing more melee jungle specialists, or is there a reason?
Well, I think that in part, you say that Necroth did really reasonably well in the RPL semifinals, but I think it was the rest of the team that did well, and then Necroth did well to not throw the game for his team, right? Right, because I feel like Necroth and Murad are extremely weak in the current meta right now because they're really just kind of pokey heroes. They get in, nibble a little bit, and jump out. Whereas I think the kind of assassins that you want as your junglers are the ones who go in and kill. And we actually saw J Team pick Butterfly to do that job, which I like a lot better in today's meta more than something like a Necroth or a Murad, because again, I feel like Vex's playstyle is very skill based, getting in and out, not dying. Whereas Necroth, you just literally have to jump in there and kill them. And particularly in the late game, sometimes you have to sacrifice yourself just to make sure that their opposing marksman dies, and then that's your job.
How do you feel? So we saw late game Murad in Valor series. He was very successful. Because you can build, if you get out ahead and you build to a late game Murad quickly, you can just chunk people in gross ways and teleport back and forth in equally gross ways. So how do you feel about maybe a lack of mobility? Which sounds stupid, but Murad's advantage of being untargetable during his temporal turbulence, being able to teleport around with his in other dimensions and things like that, do you think maybe that's giving that Murad the edge in Valor series because he doesn't have to worry about overcommitting, like you're saying? He is playing a very safe character, so maybe the mindset trouble that Western players are struggling with isn't affecting him?
Well, first of all, I think that the way to counter Murad is to be completely on point in denying him his jungle, and the best teams in the world are capable of doing that, and I think that in the Valor series they're not quite capable. And you have to full commit. You have to bring at least 4 members and completely deny him his lifeblood, which is getting to that 4 as quickly as possible. If you can prevent him from snowballing, then you win the game. And on the other hand, if you let him snowball, the game's kind of over you. So I think like step 1 is just getting rid of that, and you have to really commit. You can't just be like, oh, we're gonna pull the Sage Golem out with our Grarik or our Mina or whatever. You need to go in, take it out, kill him if possible before he can even use Temporal Turbulence, before he even gets level 4.
But early game shutdown. If the win condition to beat the character is shutting them down in the early game, doesn't that say something about the viability of the character? If you, in order to beat the game, if in order to beat the character you need to absolutely delete them, isn't that terrifying?
Well, no, he's particularly susceptible to being shut down is the problem. Because he's very weak in the early game. Other junglers can do stuff with their first and second abilities, whereas all he can do is kind of just run around and be invulnerable for a little bit. Whereas other heroes have a lot, like his first 2 abilities are more for setting up his ultimate rather than being good on themselves. Whereas other junglers are just better at fighting in general, and they can clear their jungle faster. Like for instance, if you have a jungler who clears fast, like a Kriknek for instance, you clear your jungle faster than them, and then you race into the jungle before he's even done doing his. And that's the way that you can shut him down. It's not it's doubly bad because the way that you shut him down is the easiest way to shut him down as well.
Well, Lilu wasn't shut down, and he carried Bubble Team to an upset victory over Nova Esports, the second of their best of 2 series, taking 57 minutes. And that set up for the longest game in Valor Series history. It blew my mind and my sanity at the time. But it wasn't alone. If your sanity was blown by the upset happening between Bubble Team and Nova, the entire status quo was in jeopardy the last weekend of Valor Series. DTwo Esports, the top team in Latin America, drew a tied set against Nova, the number 3 team, and Tribe Gaming, the number 2 seed in North America, took the first 2 games of the Valor Series off of ALG, a team that up till this point, remember, was undefeated.
And the funny thing about that is then Marauders, now Tribe, if they hadn't received a forfeit loss in week 1 against Kranis, they would have been tied with ALG for the top spot. So it just goes to show how much more even things are than they previously appeared to be.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to see kind of everything get upset. But that does mean with that, because we are nearing the end of the season, I should staple that in. That does mean that our top 3 sort of are solidified in most of the regions, which is pretty exciting. I think there's still wiggle room in the 4 slot in EU, and I think if Kranitz Esports now Pride Start Gaming 2-0 Allegiance this week, then there's wiggle room there as well. Well, I will say, Pride Start Gaming, post-rebrand, have been so much better. They went from a team that had not won any games to a team that has now won at least one game every week, which is insane. They're no longer the last place team. That's huge growth for them.
The amount of pride that they have gotten is stark. Okay, sorry. I try.
I
try.
No, you didn't. That's the worst part. That was not trying.
Okay.
That was.
I put the minimal effort in.
No, that was well below minimum. The top teams in each region are as follows. I'll go through and read them out, and I'll highlight any wiggle room as we go. In Europe, Nova Esports are in the first place. They may drop to Bubble Team and slide into that second place that Bubble Team is currently occupying, but most likely it will be that 1-2. Team Queso and Dead Rabbits are tied for third place currently, and fourth and fifth place are taken up by Existence and Alliance in that order. Existence did just get kind of robbed of a spot in the top 4. Same for Dead Rabbits, though. And depending on the next week of games, Existence could, I believe, upset Dead Rabbits if they play brilliantly. They still have some games to go. If they win all of them, maybe. But that would be a massive story to me either way, because both Dead Rabbits and Existence were teams that, I don't know, I kind of counted as guaranteed to be in the top 4, and we're only going to get to keep one of them.
I'm looking at week 7, so Queso defeated Dead Rabbits 2-0, and Dead
Queso
Rabbits defeated...
really good this week.
Well, if Queso looks good and they make the playoffs, then that's good for Spain then, I suppose, and as their esports in general.
Well, yeah, there was a while where I thought it was going to be 3 Spanish teams in Nova. But Bubble Team like hit the midpoint of the season, just before the midpoint really is when they started activating. And then they like haven't lost a game since. And that was around the time Team Queso decided to not lose any games since. And Team Queso have been undefeated for like 4 weeks? 5 weeks? Somewhere in that range.
Queso's been very strange because going into the season, remember we were talking about them potentially being the upstart team, and then they were doing pretty well in the beginning, and they fell off. And I feel like they had a very good... I know you probably don't remember this because you've been casting constantly, but in week 2, they had a very close game 1 versus Nova that I remember.
Oh,
and
I remember
at the
that.
time, and Ruiz didn't play the best Jinnar. He's been great since, but they lost that game very narrowly and then got shut out in game 2, and I think that kind of destroyed their confidence going forward. They just lost to everyone after that, and they've been finding a way back into it. And so perhaps this could be their late season push where they kind of get better.
It does kind of feel that way. It does feel like that's maybe what it took for them to regain a bit of confidence. And over the past few weeks, like I said, they've been terrifying. So I think Team Queso are solidified as a contender. And the European region right now is super spicy. We'll get it. Tell you what, we'll go through the bracket next week. Once the brackets are solidified, we will literally go through the bracket, and I will make my predictions here on the podcast. I will say who's going to win every region, and then you can laugh at me when I'm right. Latin America is next. They have... We were kind of highlighting them as a region that had spread out, where DTwo Esports was the guaranteed victor, and Payne was probably second, and since then they've kind of condensed again. DTwo Esports, of course, still on top, but they're only separated by 1 win from Payne Gaming sitting in second, who then are only separated by 2 wins from Nova Esports in third. Assassin's Crew is the first major step behind, but they've been a ravenous team, quickly climbing the rankings, and they lock out the number 4 slot.
I don't believe Geo can be caught though, because Pain doesn't have any games left.
No.
Right?
I think Nova could climb over Pain if they win.
Right.
But
So
that's
Geo
it.
has locked in that first spot.
Yeah. And that's a fun region, because Geo, Pain, Nova. I legitimately don't know who's going to win there. Oh! I forgot to be smug in the EU section. Remember last week when you sort of flamed me for saying the Bubble team could beat Nova?
I didn't flame you at all. What are you talking about? You can pretend that I said that.
Oh, I forgot to be smug last week. Remember when I was like, Bubble team are going to beat Nova? And everyone was like, oh, TJ. Because I remember that. I see my Twitter feed. And you know what? Bubble team beat Nova.
I'm not a random egg on your Twitter feed. I was like, sure, that could happen. It's possible.
Bubble team beat Nova. Take
It's a
that.
good prediction. It's a good prediction nonetheless. I didn't go that far, so.
I will say as well, as we spoke of last week, I didn't think Nova would lose online. I legitimately thought Nova would get through the rest of the online season without dropping another game, because this patch looked so perfect for them on paper. But if they're looking this shaky online, LAN really does make me worry for them. And I can't wait. EU's going to be spicy.
I think all that needs to happen is Vex needs to just practice Crickneck, and he's good enough that if he just changes his mindset as far as how to play him, then he'll get really good at him.
North America rounds things out. They, of course, are still headed by Allegiance, who got dealt their first 2 losses this week by Tribe Gaming, who's sitting in 2nd place. Actually have a decent shot at taking them over at LAN, I feel. Team Toxic has climbed to 3rd slot, definitely showing a little bit more potential over the last few weeks, and Drawn to Fame sit in 4th.
Yeah, North America for basically the entire season had just seemed like there's a very clear-cut top 3, maybe like a 2 and a 1 now. But yeah, the top 3 are very far away from the rest of the region, unless Pride Stark has legitimately got that much better.
Yeah, Pride Stark climbed out of 6th into 4th place as Veni Vidi Vici struggled last week, and Kranitz looked really darn good. Now Pride Stark, ex-Kranitz. If you are going to... I heard some rumors that Drawn to Fame has some travel issues. If they don't make it to LAN due to those, I would be interested to see how Pride Stark did, because they've looked so much better over the last few weeks. I think they could definitely threaten the Toxic. Although I do think Tribe and Allegiance are steps ahead of both them and Toxic.
Yeah, and I would imagine that Pride Stark playing Allegiance in the first round wouldn't be the best situation for them. It's been a decent story, especially because I was very disappointed in Kranitz losing to everyone before. So
yeah, they're
it's nice to see that.
They have good players on them, and they're like a motivated team. Like, almost everyone on the Valor Series NA staff has said they've got DMs that are like, "Hey, we know we're struggling. Have you noticed anything that we can fix?" Which, like, other teams don't do. So I'm very happy to see that.
Well, in the beginning, I was pretty surprised that they were doing so poorly, because they had multiple members in the Conqueror list. You go down the list, and it's Kranitz. So I was pretty surprised to see that. But it's good to see that they're actually getting their kind of professional gameplay under their feet. Mm-hmm. Whereas it seemed like maybe they're just too used to solo queue earlier.
Yeah, they definitely struck me as a solo queue team. Their team play was weak compared to almost everyone else, but that does feel like it's been picked up. And as I've said previously on the podcast, the team play is the easiest part to train. Because you can look at graphs, you can look at maps, you can draw lines on it. You can't train individual decision-making. That's hard to do. It's really difficult to be like, all right, well, in this 1v1, you should have done this skill instead of this skill. But if you already have individual talent and genuine talent at that, your team play is pretty easy to work on from there.
Yeah, I think the best players are the ones who both have great micro skills and can execute those team fights and individual fights well, but also are intelligent, to put it bluntly, because they can then pick up those team concepts very well.
Yeah.
And not just kind of blindly go through games.
And Allegiance losing their first 2 games, I was watching the games and I was thinking, oh, they're hiding strats. But then I saw some discussion on various Twitter platforms and stuff like that ALG really were kind of shocked by their own loss. So it wasn't maybe a side effect of them hiding strats for finals, and maybe Tribe Gaming just genuinely caught them off guard, which to me is a much more interesting storyline, because Allegiance have been, it feels like, resting on their laurels for a while.
Is that a pun for Rest, the team captain?
Yes, it was. Thank you for catching that.
Well, at the very least, there will be competition in order to get out of North America, which is good for their prospects at AIC, because whoever gets out will have proven themselves to be the best, rather than Allegiance just getting a free ticket out of there without having any competition. And I feel like if you just get a free pass out of your region, you're in trouble coming into the AIC, because you won't really have that battle testedness, and you won't have the strategies under your belt.
I'm saying that they might be getting a bit sleepy in the first place position.
So, will they see a KO? Or... oh no. Will they be rockered?
That's not good, DTwo. That's not good. All right, that wraps up the Valor series. However, of course, there were other completed regions. RPL saw their victor in Bizarre Gaming, who took the win and now represents Thailand at the Arena of Valor International Championship. And the GCS has just hit playoffs, which will start this Friday. You've been watching that league closely, so if you'd like to break it down, now's your opportunity.
Well, it's going to be a bloody playoffs, and it's actually a gauntlet-style playoff, so 3rd and 4th play in the first round. The winner plays the second team, and the winner of that plays the first team. Now, it turned out as J-Team Flash Wolves, SMG AHQ. And if you guys don't know, J-Team was the 3rd place team at AWC. AHQ is the world champion Korean roster, and SMG are the reigning AIC champions. And all these stories are insane. Go ahead.
AHQ, of course, represented Korea at the AWC. If they win the Taiwan Chinese Taipei League, who do they represent? What are they?
I was trying to go through the old news articles on the Garena Taiwan sites, and if I read it correctly, I believe that they cannot receive the Taiwan spot.
Right.
Any foreign teams cannot receive the Taiwan spot. So if AHQ get to the finals, I believe that J-Team automatically goes to AIC. I believe. Don't completely quote me on that one, but I'm guessing that's the case. And I'm not really sure. There's a King of Glory tournament, which is the Chinese version of AOV going on in Korea right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if AHQ would just go to the AIC, or if that would be the winner of that, but that wouldn't really make sense because it's actually a different game, so...
Yeah, so we did have... This is where things get interesting, and we just genuinely don't know. So this is all speculation, and I should clarify that because I do occasionally represent Tencent now in some places. I'm not a representative of Tencent. I do not know more than the average person. So...
Sometimes.
Most of the time. I'm an idiot, mate. So, during the AWC, we had a team from China. That Chinese team came from kind of the Division 2, the Farm League, of the KPL, which is the King Pro League and possibly the biggest esports league in the world, made for King of Glory, the Chinese edition or sister game of Arena of Valor, however you'd like to define that. The KPL is expanding to Korea. With that expansion, there is also King of Glory as the game coming out in Korea at the same time. So there's going to be an esports push alongside the release of the game in Korea. I genuinely don't know what that means for the future of Arena of Valor esports. My understanding is that that will be Arena of Valor esports kind of stopping down in Korea, and we'll get the KPL teams much like we did for China. That's my guess. and that would explain why AHQ were drafted into the Thailand League this season, because KPL in Korea... Taiwan. Look, they're both fine. Anyway, that would explain why they were drafted into the GCS this season, because it gives AHQ, an opportunity to stay sharp, and they certainly have, threatening the existing teams. And the KPL in the region hasn't really spun up yet. It literally just started, so drafting a team from there to play versus the best AOV teams wouldn't really be fair.
Yeah, I would be kind of disappointed if someone from the Korean KPL came out and went to the ASC, because AHQ have certainly proven themselves to be still very strong.
Yeah,
and
really, I think that's like the best case scenario. Like the fact that AHQ actually, it wasn't just a one-off, they're still one of the best teams in the world. That's super sick.
Yeah, I honestly have zero idea what to think going into the playoffs. I believe that the best teams, as far as the end of the regular season was concerned, who look the best, are SNG and AHQ, and they're playing in the 3-4 spot in the first round. So I think whoever wins that is going to win the actual tournament. And that's kind of weird to think about when you think the third and fourth teams are the best. SNG in particular, they've won 7 series in a row. I think like 4 weeks ago, they were 1-5 and sitting tied for 6th place. And they just beat everyone, including they 2-0'd all the top 3 teams in that span. So SMG went from looking like they were in trouble, what's going on. They randomly defeated J-Team and at this special event during the regular season, and they were crying for a solid 5 minutes. And then from there, there was just that emotional rebound, and they just ran off 6 more series in a row after that, and they're looking ridiculously good.
I'll have to keep an eye on them. Of course, will also get some regional play in Sao Paulo, which is pretty exciting. It was, of course, at the last Valor Series finals that we kind of got the first inklings of how the various regions were doing against each other. The EU teams were coming back. I remember Shurka walking up to me at E3 and going, TJ, it is not good. We haven't won a single game versus the NA teams. And that was the moment where we kind of knew that NA was better than we were giving them credit for, and they of course went on to take that 5th, 6th slot at the AWC, so they certainly went pretty far. My question is now, when we get to Sao Paulo, there of course won't be any official games between regions. That's saved for the AWC. Do you think maybe the scrims we hear about behind the scenes will give us a look into how those teams are doing? And do you think it will be different? Has EU grown as a region?
Well, I think EU in general, I think the depth is a bit better there. So, but that doesn't really help as far as like the top teams are concerned. I feel like Tribe and Allegiance, if they're not better than Europe, they're at least in the same level as Nova and Bubble Team. Mm-hmm. It's hard to make predictions at this point because I feel like Allegiance haven't had to play against anyone and to give them a challenge until Tribe just defeated them this past week. So again, this is just kind of wishy-washy on me. Obviously, I know, but I don't know. I feel like they're pretty close. I'm curious to see how much progress South America has made up until this point, because they were seen as clearly the inferior region going into this, but they made a lot of strides, and perhaps they can kind of give the Europe and North America team some competition.
Here's my prediction. NA is still better. The top of NA is still better than EU.
Including Tribe?
Including Tribe. I would say Tribe and Allegiance still beat out Bubble Team and Nova, but it will be close. And I think Latin America will give everyone a shock, because Geo Esports and Pain Gaming are genuinely delightful to watch. I don't know if they'll be able to beat EU or NA, but I believe that they will give everyone a shock.
Yeah, we'll just have to listen to those scrims. Speaking of those scrims, by the way, I think even among the For the Dream team, there was conflicting reports of that. Whereas we had Circles like, yeah, they're just better than us. And then we had Violet say, oh, we were just trying different strategies out, and that's why they beat us. So... Well,
let me tell you about Arena of Violet. He went to the AWC with a coach's notebook. He was the coach there because he's actually a really successful student, or he'd finished his degree in like some business field, and he like had to go to Saudi Arabia to make billions of dollars. So as a result, he wasn't able to play anymore. He's terrifying. Anyway, so he's a smart man. He's walking around in a suit with a notebook, and then we're like all trying to figure out what's in that notebook. What are the secret EU strats that Violet's been working on? We get to their game versus China, and they put down the notebook for everyone to see, and written in big letters across the entire notebook reads, "Don't feed EU secret strat." And then you know what they did, Daniel?
They fed?
They fed. So I'm just saying, as a source, Arena of Valor lost a little bit of credibility that day.
Well, you can't say his strategy was mistaken.
I suppose you're right. I think that just about wraps us up, though. But I'd like to introduce something new. Don't tune out, because we're running a new program. We saw some feedback. I've been getting rather consistent feedback about it. People want a way to ask us questions, ask us and our guests questions. I have a couple different guests I'm trying to get for for the next week, but they are all professional players. So if you have any questions for a Valor Series level player, you can go ahead and send them in. The way you do that is you head on over to our Twitter. We have a new Twitter. It is at TowerDiveAOV. That's at TowerDiveAOV, or you can use the hashtag TowerDivePodcast, and you can tweet your questions, comments, anything you'd like us to talk about. Send me a dank beam. I'll bring it up. We're also going to be playing around with format over the next few weeks. Look for more content from the both of us, perhaps in video form, perhaps live. We'll sort things out. You can keep your eyes glued to the at TowerDiveAOV Twitter feed for all the details of that, or you can chase us down individually. I'm at Esports TJ on Twitter. D2 is at D2HS. You should subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it on. It is available as podcast, a Spotify playlist, a web thing, anchor.fm/towerdive, or you can head on over to the Samurai Gamers Arena of Valor page, which is D2.
SGAOV.com.
Nailed it. Tea was hot, which was a good thing. But, like, not in the expected way.